Welcome to Reselling Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Rolando, and we're on episode 316, an update episode.
Yeah, we love our update episodes because it's our chance to kind of talk about the things going on in our life, reselling wise, what's going on in the reselling world in general, give you some I think we decided juicy BOLOs wasn't good and spicy wasn't good. I don't know. We got to come.
No, I think they're fair.
Profitable BOLOs.
There you go.
Financially rewarding items that you should be on the lookout for.
There you
It's
go.
a little
there
bit
you
more
go.
more business professional, I guess. So
we're good. We're good.
right.
It keeps people tuning in when we're not professional. So, all right. Hey, a lot going on these days. I want to go with you first. I'm gonna start with the bad, and then I'm gonna go to the good. So we'll end on a good note because this is a keep it real episode.
wait. So you're going to start with the bad and end with the good.
Yes.
So you want me to go first?
No.
I don't understand where this is going.
No. Okay. I don't know. I'm not ready. I'm trying to gather my thoughts here.
Oh, okay. So
how's things going, Mike?
yeah, I mean, pretty good. So I went out sourcing this last Saturday to some garage sales, and it was kind of a funky timing wise because I had to drop my in-laws off at the airport in the morning, and they needed
super early.
Yeah, I mean, super early in the sense of like not early enough to go.
That's what I was asking.
The golden hour, right? So it was like 7 o'clock when they needed to be at the airport.
Okay.
So by the time I got them to the airport, got them dropped off, got back on the road, it's like 7:30. And so a good portion of garage sales is already done by that point, especially when you consider that area. Now, I could have spent the time to drive back out to like where I live, which is, a little bit further out of town from San Diego, from the airport. But by that time, by the time I got back into that area, it'd be like well past 8, it'd be like 8:15, I'm sure. So I'm like, okay, it's not worth doing that. So I need to get something closer. So I'm like, all right, what if I just look up some stuff near to the airport? And one of the things I realized is there are definitely benefits to us being in a populated city area, populated county. We hear people say they're out in rural areas, and so they have benefits too. There's tons of benefits, but one of the things, depending on where you're at in the country, is that garage sales aren't as abundant as they are here, right? Southern California, pretty much year round, there's going to be garage sales. There's not like a winter time where people are out shoveling their driveways from snow, and so they're not doing garage sales. Like they're doing garage sales all the way through. It slows down and peaks at various times of the year, but the weather is nice enough here that we can do garage sales pretty much anytime. So there's the benefit of that. But then what I've realized, this is only maybe the second or third time I've tried to source in the like actual San Diego City proper area.
Oh man, that's brutal out there.
It's horrible.
It is. I never like going down there.
So if you're,
I tried it a couple of times.
Yeah, if you're in like an actual city, it's not worth it. Like where the money is, there's like a sweet spot. So there's the city itself, right? The urban areas, and then there's the way outskirts rural areas, which can do okay, but depending on where you're at, and then there's like the suburbs. And I feel like that's where you're gonna you tend to get the
it all depends on what you sell, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
Sure, right? So like, but the suburbs is tends to be where you're gonna have people who they've got a little bit of money, but it's also like a little bit easier to get to like houses, even parking, right? Like when you're trying to park downtown in an urban area, and it's like, oh yeah, I mean, we're used to being able to pull up to a garage sale, look real quick.
I just park in the middle of the street sometimes.
Yeah, and you can't do that when you're downtown, right?
No.
So anyways, I found one that was essentially a community rummage sale, is how it was presented, and it was a rummage sale in like a giant apartment complex type building. And so I was like, okay, we'll see how this goes. Well, where this was actually like kind of like a little bit closer to like the Hillcrest area. And where this was is, I'm assuming the building itself, I mean, it was an older building. You could tell that most of the people who live there are a little bit older. And there's like a community center room or a community room in the building. And that's where they were having this rummage sale.
Where'd you park?
I mean, I just was able to find a parking on the street. I had to walk a little ways. It wasn't
because that area is tough. It's not like you can just pull up to the building.
Right, exactly. And so it was a little bit harder. But I mean, I was there early enough. I think it started at 8. So I'm like, okay, sweet. I'm actually going to be here before it starts. So I get good parking. I get in there, and there's maybe 9 people selling inside of this community room. And it's all like one of the worst things. Like the two things that I don't like finding are when we've mentioned before, when you pull up to a garage sale and it's just lots of baby stuff.
Oh, it's the worst.
Right. Now there's money and kid stuff for sure, but if it's just like baby clothes,
there isn't.
I mean, there can be, right? I mean, you sell toys, so there's
no, that's true. That's true. But we're talking about like little kid, and there's a part of me, like I know that market really well because I had kids, right? So it's very easy. You can very easily find out like if something's worth something or not, you know?
So that's one that is kind of, you already just know like, okay, this is not going to be what I'm hoping for. And then the other one is like the elderly. Now there is the element
Easy
of
now.
Well, I'm saying that there's an element of like, okay, you can get to like some really good vintage stuff.
Yeah.
You can find, I mean, there's definitely that sweet spot of, hey, I was at an estate sale and I just scored like crazy, right? There's a person in their 70s, 80s, 90s, they passed away. And there's really good stuff here that they had since they were a kid, and it's vintage and it's amazing. But a lot of times when it's like a garage sale, not a vintage or a estate sale, and it's people in their 70s, 80s, 90s, a lot of times they're just gathering random stuff around their house and bringing it down. And it's like the stuff that they didn't want. Like, here's some as seen on TV stuff that I had bought, never opened and, used. And I think for some reason, someone's going to want this foot bath of mine, that I used a few times.
The TV ears are good though.
They can be
on TV.
for
TV
sure.
ears are good.
There are certain things, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
right?
I get it. And the problem is with that is a lot of the stuff they feel is really valuable. Right. And so that's where the difficulty runs in, because it's different when you go out to like an estate sale and everything is priced high. It's a little different because it seems to me that, especially in the city, people hold on to things more. Mm-hmm. Right. Because when they're in the suburbs, whatever, I think they're always buying stuff. Right. When they're in the city, they have to be really selective in what's in their place.
Yeah. When you have a smaller space, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, like just the very first one. And I knew that there wasn't a lot in the area. I'd already checked. And so I'm like, I'm just going to walk this thing twice. I'm going to look at everything. And there was just nothing. I mean, there was a couple things I looked at, but it was, cheapy coffee pots that they probably got at Walmart 5-10 years ago, and there's, like I said, foot baths and random clothes that are out of style.
That is one of the grossest things to ever pick up.
Yeah. And so it was, calculators, but not like nice, TI-85s or whatever, but like the big giant calculators that you get at Walgreens in the
calculator section.
So, it was just not good. And so it was a bit of a bummer just to see that. But I tried. I really did. I found a couple of things that were interesting to look up, but just nothing ended up panning out. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to just suck it up and drive a little bit. So I drove towards Mission Valley, because then I saw there's a community sale. And this community sale is advertising 400 condos in this community.
And it's not cheap to live in there. So
no.
I know a lot of people they have no idea what we mean by Mission Valley. So Mission Valley's probably 10 minutes outside of the center of downtown. And I would say a condo there that's maybe, 1,300 square feet. It's probably about $4,000 to $5,000 a month on the low end.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's money there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just for rent.
So so I'm like, okay, some condos here, 400 of them. It says the community is going to be, selling, and it's hit or miss, right? You go to community sales and there's times where it's like, man, tons of people are participating in it. And it made it seem like in the article or in the Craigslist ad that there was going to be lots of participation. So I get there.
Those are my favorite. And 400 homes.
Yeah. Well, and you always know, like 400 homes. I'm like, okay, if there's 400 homes, it'd be great to get like 20 homes participating, 20, 25 homes. That's like a dream. And so I get there, and it's like a half hour after their like stated start time. So I'm for sure everybody's going now. This is going to be probably all the good stuff's gone. And I started driving around. There were 4. And the 4th was setting up. And me and some other resellers, I'm assuming they're resellers, stood out for like 15 minutes while they're setting stuff up.
That makes it even worse.
Because we're like, come on, and the lady's like, there's other places you can drive around and I'll finish setting up. And it's like, well, I already went to the other 2 and it's you. Now think about this for a second. 400 condos in this community and 4 of them were selling. That is, and it says over 400 condos. So there's more than 400 condos in the community. That is under 1% participation. Under 1% participation. How can you even advertise this as like a community thing when there's less than 1% participation?
Well, let me explain to you what happens. So this happens all the time. There's an area out here that there's always a post that there's a community sale, 300 homes. And what it is, it's one person that wants to sell their stuff at a garage sale. And they
ask a couple of their neighbors.
Yeah, no, they don't even ask their neighbors. They just say that there's a community sale. So everybody goes to that one sale because it's the only one there. I mean, it's a genius move, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. That's just my thoughts.
I mean, part of the reason why I do think it was like an organized community sale in a sense, because I've lived in a condo like that before in a HOA. And when you're at an HOA, you can't just do, depending on the HOA, but a lot of HOAs, you can't just have a garage sale whenever you want. There's like 2 dates during the year and the HOA votes on them. So like we'll have one in the spring and one in the fall. And those are the 2 dates that you can have a garage sale if you're in this HOA. Yeah, so that's why they do like that. It's a community sale in the sense of like, here's the one weekend we're allowed to sell as a community. But you would imagine like the HOA or the people there would like try a little bit harder if that's something they really wanted to do. So, because I've been to some where you can tell that whoever put it on, like I've been at some where I'm shopping and the person who's like one of the organizers putting it on is driving by. How's everything going? They're like, thanks, Cheryl. This is a great sale this year. And they're like having a whole conversation about how, you know, this is the best one they've had in a few years. And how's Tom doing down the street? No, so-and-so. Like you could tell it's a real community that's like organizing this, but man, less than 1% participation. So all that to say, it was definitely a bust. I probably could have picked up a few things for very small profit, but as I mentioned before, I'm trying to be extra selective right now.
And I think you should be. I think we're at a time where right now there's so much out there that you got to be selective. You know, sorry, I'm not on the mic.
Yeah, you got to talk to the mic, man.
All right, thanks, Mike.
We want our audience to hear what we're saying.
Now, I will say the best one that is run by more. So out here, I don't know if it's like this. Let us know in the comments. Usually these community sales are run by mortgage companies or like realtors, right? And so, for example, the best one is the Beers Home Team, I think, in San Diego. Shout out to them. I guess, you know, they didn't pay us for this, but they like give you free Krispy Kreme donuts and water bottles, and they have a sweet map. And the map is like, the worst is I've been to some where they give you a map, but there's no like street names or anything. It's just little dots on the map.
Yeah, stars.
And if you're by yourself, like I've had where I've done a ton of swerving trying to figure out where I'm at. So, all right. Well, no, I'll talk about garage sales in a little bit. So I'll be real with you guys. I probably had the worst sales I've had in a long time. I think in May I went through this, and if things don't pick up, there's a GoFundMe. I'm just joking. No. I'll probably have to dip into my savings here a little bit. Now I do keep my savings and my capital separate, and so I can't get rid of the capital. So Mike, you know, when he first came over today and before we started recording, Mike had said, "You just got to stop buying," right? And I understand Mike's point of view. Mike's like, just get stuff listed because he has so much garbage not listed. Right. And it's true. It's valid. 100% valid.
Well, I didn't say garbage you don't have listed, but my thought is if you're spending, let's say 30 to 40% of your time as a reseller right now sourcing and sales aren't coming in, like maybe you allot 20% or half of that time that you're currently spending, however many hours per week, half of that to listing, and then going through your listings and like putting stuff on sale, making sure that they're like at prices that'll sell. Because I mean, if you start fire selling stuff, because I mean,
no, it's not. Listen, I've done it. I'm telling you. So I'm at a point right now where I don't know what to do.
So how many unlisted items do you have? Like if you were to guesstimate, is it over 500?
Do we need to be that real on this podcast?
Yeah,
I want to say at least maybe 300,
maybe more,
maybe more. You might be right.
Right.
But here's the thing. It's right now the buying is so good, and everything I've read is that in a downturn economy, you got to build your business. Even things are slow, you keep building, because then when things turn around, you're in a better place. And so that's kind of the mentality I'm having. But I will tell you right now, I've done everything. I've run snails. It's been like snails. I've run sales. I do coupons. I've, accepted a lot of offers. And I still get the lowball offers where I won't accept it. Like somebody today offered me $10 on something that's worth 40. And I'm like, I'm not going to take $10. Like if you buy like maybe 20 items, I'll think about it. So I've done everything. I've been listing consistently every day. Okay, it's not like I haven't been listing. I've been shipping on time every day. I have promoted listings at 2% or more. I have everything, unless I'm missing something. Maybe I need to do pay-per-click, but I think that's just going to be a mess if I did pay-per-click, and it's not even worth it for the items that I sell. So I don't really know what's going on. I'm not in panic mode though. I've learned, now that I'm in my 40s, that no one wins when people panic. No one wins when people make sudden decisions. You just got to sit back and you keep rolling with it. And then you find ways to adapt and you make it happen. And we could maybe have a whole different conversation in 2 weeks. The crazy thing about it is Q4. And what's different about this Q4 is I'm not out doing Amazon right now. So maybe last year it was like this and I just didn't notice it because I was doing well on Amazon. And it's not to say I haven't tried Amazon. I've been out there. I went to a couple Rosses. I went to TJ Maxx. I went to Marshall's. And maybe the cook groups have picked them all up, but I'm just not seeing anything. On top of that, prices are really low at those stores. And a lot of the inventory they have is some of the same inventory they had last year. So I don't know what's going on. I'm not stressed about it. I always have realized that things will rebound. Things will be okay. And, you know, I've told you guys I've been in places where I've been 60K in debt, 100K in debt because of Amazon, and within a year I'm back to all good. So being in those bad scenarios kind of lets you know that you can always rebound. So, anyways, all right. So let's talk about good stuff. Well, this is kind of good, kind of bad. So the Padres, man, did I sell Padres stuff? It was a good time. I mean, we made it to the championship. I had championship tickets I was going to resell and make like a couple K on those. I was going to go to the game, but it was good while it lasted. I got to tell you, if you remember my G.I. Joe story and how I missed out on the G.I. Joe, but I got all this Padre stuff. And I got to tell you that Padre, at least a 1K within a couple weeks, you know? And so it's been good. It's been really, really good. And then, you know, now they lost and they're not in the World Series. And so now the Phillies gear stuff is selling, but I don't have any more. Do you realize we sold a Bryce Harper jersey on Whatnot for like $5? Hey, see, that's you don't even, we didn't even know who Bryce Harper was when we sold it.
Is he somebody?
Yeah, he's the guy that knocked that home run that ended the Padres going to the World Series. He's like one of the best players out there. We had no idea when we sold it on Whatnot. So props to you, whoever. Let us know in the comments if that was you. And if you're going to resell, are you wearing that to a Phillies game? Because it's just funny because now we sold a bunch of Philly stuff. And yeah, probably should have held on a little bit longer.
Guess so. You never know.
No. Garage sales. I probably had one of the biggest scores in a long time this last Saturday. Those of you who follow us on Insta saw that. You know, I did that community sale and I went to a great community sale. I showed up, the map. Like, what's awesome is the ones that they give you the website address and everything's already on the map on that website, right? And you just click on it and it tells you the address and you know where you're going. Unfortunately, I showed up and I didn't really score anything. And so it's like 9:30 in the morning and I'm on my way home and I decided to stop by a house. And I remember this house said it had model trains and it had Hot Wheels and had all the things I like picking up. But I was like, I don't want to battle like people. Because lately people have been showing up like at 4:35 in the morning. I'm not one of those people. Like I might show up at 6 if it's at 7, but I'm not showing up at 5:30 or 5 a.m. It's just, my quality of life. I can't do it. So show up at this garage sale and it was wild. No one was there. It was just me and the people hanging out there. We started talking about the Padres. Remember, it's always good to, you know, have some commonality. And they had a bunch of Charger stuff and it was wild. Like there were Lionel trains that they never didn't sell, just sitting there. And I asked them how much for the model trains and they're like, $20. And automatically in 2 or 3 days, I already sold like 4 for about $80 to $100. I already made my profit on those. And then there was a new Bolo that I never encountered. Before the Bolo, there's a bunch of Chargers jerseys, Charger shirts. I paid $1 a piece. It was crazy the stuff I was picking up. And then I came across something that I've never thought of before. And I think somewhere on TikTok or YouTube, I don't even know when this was. And I always say this, when you're watching YouTube or you're listening to a podcast, just try to just keep things in your memory. I don't know how you do it, but it comes through when it counts. And so somehow I knew that there was money in bocce ball, lawn bowling, and croquet. You ever played any of those?
Oh yeah, all of them.
Okay, I haven't done croquet. I might set up a set with my kids and play some croquet.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, I used to where I grew up in the desert, and we had extreme. We called it desert ball, and it was like extreme croquet. And okay. we actually had some people who made metal mallets. We'd actually have them welded together, and they're big old mallets. And we played with baseballs,
like Mad Max.
And it went over several people's houses. So it was like one person's house would have 2 of the goals, and then you'd have to go under a ravine thing and up onto this hill, and then over the next person's house, and they'd have some goals. And we'd play all day. It was a ton of fun, but it was like extreme croquet.
Wow, that sounds like fun.
But lawn games, outdoor lawn games. There's definitely money.
And the comps weren't like older comps like from the summer. They're like recent, like middle of October comps. So I purchased, I think, 4 sets of vintage bocce ball, 3 sets of lawn bowling, 2 sets of croquet, And I just asked the guy, and I didn't haggle at all at this garage sale because he's like, I don't know. How about $30 for all of it? I'm like, what? 30? Okay, you sold. And then I bought another croquet set for 20 that sells for $250 to $300. And it was a score. I'm probably going to make on the conservative end, probably like $1K. I've already made all my money back from that morning. I spent $91 in total. I've already made, I think, like $225. And I haven't even, and Mike knows, I haven't listed pretty much any of it. And there are some other things I picked up too. But here's the thing with garage sales. I always, you get those moments where you feel defeated. Like you go to a few and you're like, I'm just going to go home, and I used to do that, but I've had too many times where it's the last one that makes your entire morning. And so this made my morning. I learned the new BOLO, and there's a free BOLO because it's not even the BOLO I'm talking about later on. And so it was good. It was good. It was great. I think now I'm going to definitely keep an eye. I didn't know that like even some like lawn bowling, like the ball itself, if it's like a certain size, can sell for over $100 just for the ball. Like that's pretty wild to me. So anyways, yeah, it was good. It was good. I hate, what's also been good is getting my American Bowl Boy on time. And I have not sold a lot of clothes. I've sold a lot of collectibles, which means I've needed a lot of bowl wrap and I've needed it quick. And American Bowl Boy has been great. I ordered it. I get it next day. In my area, you might get it next day in your area or 2 day, but it's free shipping. You could also do local pickup and that's great. I love the fact that you can local pickup, because if you're really in a desperation and you need to ship something out by tomorrow morning, you have a warehouse nearby, and the American Bowl Boy has several of them throughout the country. Like that really comes in clutch, right? You'd be willing to drive 30 minutes to get the American Bowl Boy, then drive 10 minutes and get ripped off at Walmart. At least that's my thoughts. So anyways, check them out, AmericanBowlBoy.com. Use our link below, and helps us out, helps you out, and you get that free shipping. All right, you got some random stories here?
Yeah, I mean, not a crazy random story, but just something that kind of reminded me of the importance of kind of keeping up with pop culture. Now, I'm not going to lie. I hate pop culture. Like, I can't stand most of this. Like, I don't watch TV. I don't watch most sports, and I'm not just trying to come across like a curmudgeon, but like I've got other things to do, right? Like
that's a vocab word, man.
Yeah. So I often hear people like and this is where I get most of my pop culture is basically water cooler talk. Like I'm in the break room and people are talking about the shows they're watching on Netflix and the things that are, whatever's happening in sports, and nothing against it. Like I have certain things that I'll splurge every once in a while and spend some time on Netflix on a show or on a sport here and there. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing those things, but for some people, it's like their entire lives. And I've got other things going on, so I don't have the time to devote to that. But it is important to know kind of what's going on, what's popular at the time. Like I mentioned, and this was like kind of a silly one, but when the Queen's Gambit was out, and I was like, pay attention to chess sets. Like there's like chess is hot right now. And some people said like, hey, like I scored pretty good on some chess stuff, which normally is not a huge bolo unless you got some really unique stuff. But if you're just kind of keeping up with trends and, there's a influx of interest in a certain area. So while I was at the I'm going to call it the old person rummage sale. While I was at the old person rummage sale, I saw, and this kind of goes to one of your bolos from last week. I saw a couple of coffee table books.
Oh yeah.
Marilyn Monroe.
Okay.
And I don't know if you know or not, but I've heard people talking around the grapevine or around the water cooler and all that there's a
grapevine and water cooler in different worlds.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like the rumor mill, people are talking, I guess.
Yeah.
But there's a Marilyn Monroe like documentary or docuseries.
Yeah, I haven't watched it, but it got terrible reviews.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
but terrible enough that it went viral.
Gotcha. So one of those things. So anyways, I know that like right now that's big. So I'm like, what? I bet you there's money in Marilyn Monroe right now. I mean, I'm sure there's always collectors who are into collecting stuff. And from what I gather, it's a tragic story. So, I mean, I don't know if I'd have picked up stuff anyways, not the type of stuff I normally sell, but I was interested to see like what things were selling for. And it just so happened that these specific coffee table books just weren't valuable enough, especially for what the person, like we talked about, what they thought it was worth. It's like they had 2 books plus like a coffee mug plus something else. And you could tell they're older. They're probably from like the 90s or whatever, these books. And they want like $30 each, and that's about what they're selling for on eBay. So I'm just like, yeah, no, there's no room. If it was like $1 each, I'd pick them up and flip something like that. But it was just like a reminder to me that even if you're like me and you don't keep up with pop culture, it's worth it to kind of have a little bit of your pulse, your finger on the pulse of culture, what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I've mentioned this in the past with, when it comes to what toys are going to sell well during Christmas, right? What are the kids into right now? What are the 5 to like 12-year-olds? Because they're like a huge market for Christmas time. Like, what shows are they watching? What YouTube shows? And then you can kind of figure out like, okay, it's Ryan's World or it's this. Okay, well, what toys on those are they interested in right now? So if you just spent like an hour kind of just getting your finger on the pulse every so often, like what's hot right now, and the valuable thing you can potentially do is find a couple of YouTubers who like they're pop culture YouTubers, and you don't have to watch all their stuff because then it becomes literally like all consuming content. There's just so much out there. But if you just can get like almost like a spark notes of a couple of big shows out right now, or a couple of like comic books or whatever genre you're kind of into, because that's going to give you an idea of the types of things you should be picking up. If you don't know what new Marvel movies are coming out, you might be passing on items at a thrift store or at a garage sale where it's like, oh man, who would have known? Like I should have picked up that kind of weird looking She-Hulk thing that I saw like a couple months ago because there was a show coming out, and I had no idea that this random ugly toy that, is old and busted might actually be worth something because people are now interested in this, kind of niche Marvel comic. So you kind of have to be aware, even if it's not something you're doing because you love, what's happening with celebrities or what's happening with movies and TV shows. Just having an idea of what's going on is very helpful. And I would imagine if I wasn't had a full-time job where I'm hearing stuff around the water cooler, how would I know, right? If I was a full-time reseller with my personality, I'd probably never turn on anything that's like pop culture ever.
Yeah.
So I would just have no idea unless I am actively spending time doing that. So I'm sure there's some of our listeners out there who can relate to that, where you're just like, you know what? I don't really care what's happening on TMZ or on, Netflix, but every once in a while you got to find something, even if it's just like, I don't know, maybe we got to find a couple of resources that might be helpful with that, of just like a 10-minute YouTube video a couple times a week. That's just like
when I get on TikTok, I find out like pretty quick what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, however your sources, but then at the same time, that can be a thing where you're spending maybe hours on TikTok. No, I'm not saying you, but people are spending hours, and the return on investment isn't there. So like you want to find that sweet spot of, hey, I only spend X amount of time to find out what's hot, and it's worth the amount of time I'm investing in that.
Yeah. I mean, like right now, one of the biggest things is the World Cup was moved to Christmas, and you probably didn't know that, but World Cup's a big deal. It's an international thing. So if you have World Cup items, like right now is the time to list them. And this is the first time I don't even know what that happened when I was a kid, but there's a lot to sell. There's a lot going on with Kanye West. I don't know how that's doing. Adidas just dropped them. And so maybe those Yeezys will be worth money. Maybe not. Maybe you don't want to sell them because you have a principal stance. I don't know. But there's definitely, there's a lot to say about what you said, because even TikTok, even there's like cultural trends within TikTok, like the candies one time were a lot of money, or, the lights that people put in the room, like all those were like super hot at one time and then they died out. Right. So yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I hear what you're saying. Like there's a lot going on. Right. All right. So mine is, I'm trying to stay positive here, but I got to tell you, eBay has been brutal. Returns lately. And I don't know if it's because of a downturn economy, and, I don't think it's going to get better as far as people returning or people challenging things. My thoughts are, I don't think we're going to be in a better place this time next year economically, regardless of who's in office. I think we're going to be reaping what we've been doing the last 2 years. And not trying to make this an economic show, but, I don't know, there's talk about, 40% chance of maybe a mild depression, which would be interesting as far as like, how do we resellers adapt to that? Maybe we'll make we made one about how to resell in a recession. We never made one if that were to happen. So we did joke about it at some time, and now it's not even a joke anymore. All right. Now I've had Return City. Like I can't even begin to explain. Like I had one, I sold a camera in July for $150 and had somebody third week of October asking for me to refund them. Like out of the blue, I get this message, and it always throws you off, because even if you have a 30 or 60 day, when you get something to approve a return, I have automatic approval. So when I get it, I'm reading it, and the story was that they bought the camera in July, and then they noticed something wasn't working. So then they went to the camera shop, and then the camera shop sent it out somewhere. Then they got it back to them, and then the camera shop said it would be $140 to fix. And so now they want me to refund them. And I'm like, now there could be validity to the story, but I turned that down, and luckily eBay spared me. Had another one. Sold a train, 4 parts, missing parts, broken, not good. I shared this in the Discord too. I send it out, and the person's like, hey, I tried to get it to work. It's not working. I'm like, what? I go, did you miss where I said it's for parts and not working? They're like, yeah, if I read that, I wouldn't have bought it. I'm like, what? So not only that, then they return it. And there's pieces missing that were not missing before. So then I give them a 50% refund on 4 parts not working item. Then they open a case on me. And luckily, eBay sided with me, and eBay refunded them. No cost to me. We're good. Then I get another message like a day later. I ship out a dress in a poly bag, which I do all the time. And I guess a person went to town with their scissors and like cut the straps on their dress. And then they sewed it together. And then they messaged me like, hey, can we do a refund? Like, you need to work on your packaging. I was like, unfortunately, I sell this all the time. I'd love to give you a refund. I even would love to replace it for you, but I don't have any more available. My apologies. A week later, I get a message, refund approved. Return approved. So they're trying to ship it back. So then I call eBay. Now I tell people, don't call eBay. Don't call eBay. Don't call eBay unless you have to. I've called eBay probably at least 5 times in the last month. So I call eBay. And I told the lady, I'm like, listen, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like this has been a weekly thing. I never want to call you guys because I know you guys are busy. And she's like, yeah, it's been interesting lately. And I said, okay, so what can we do with the dress? She's like, you know what? Do you use our shipping supplies? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, now I want everybody to understand we are concierge, okay? Not like we're elite or anything. We just got the concierge because we went to eBay Open a while back, and I don't know what other reasons, but that's why I have concierge. And she said, you use our shipping supplies. I'm going to give you a $20 gift card for more shipping supplies if you like.
Nice.
And I was like, all right. And then she said, when you get the dress, refund them 50%. And they'll open a case. We'll take care of them. And then call us back, report them, and we'll take care of you again.
Hey.
And I was like, all right, I can do that. Like, I'm all right. So I felt like it was a win. I didn't mention with the train thing. I had the same thing. I said, the person's trying to return it. I really don't want them to return it. And then they said, because that's what happened. They gave me negative feedback because it wasn't working. And I know, was it the train? I don't even know. It wasn't the train. It was an elf costume that they wanted to return because the elf costume didn't look. No, it wasn't. I don't know. I'm so jumbled. Anyways, eBay sided in my favor again with the negative feedback and helped out. Here's the thing. I think we all need to make sure we're on, and we'll talk about this later, on top of our game when it comes to customer service, keeping our cool. I strongly encourage everyone to do returns because in all these cases, I'm pretty sure if I didn't offer returns and somebody left me a negative feedback, I would have been stuck with it. I'm pretty sure in these cases, if I didn't offer returns, eBay would not have refunded me any money. And so again, there's a value to get your place as far as top rated seller by selling good enough items, providing customer service, and offering free returns. So in the end, you're protected. So that's kind of where we're at. So,
all right. I like it.
Now we got some info from the Discord, and I got to tell you, the Discord has been a powerful place to learn things lately.
Yeah, no, it's been really awesome. I mean, the one of the cool things with the Discord is not only do we get to learn a ton of stuff, because I'm learning things all the time, like BOLOs or somebody found something really cool, or a way of shipping something, or just a niche that somebody's in, and just learning from that. But also just the ability to like have some community, some people who get it, right? That can just kind of laugh and joke with you with the things you're dealing with, and be able to be like, can you believe this customer?
Feel the pain,
right? And then because if you were to tell somebody, just out on the street, I don't mean out on the street. You're not stopping a random person, but you know what I mean? Like, like a normie family member of yours, it's not a reseller. And you're like, this customer is whatever. And they're like, oh, okay. Well,
no one cares.
No one gets it.
No one cares.
But if you're a reseller, you get it. You understand what's going on. So it's definitely been a powerhouse of a community, just learning things and getting, that community. And if you don't know what we're talking about, so we have a Discord that is a kind of a benefit of being our Patreon supporter. So the Patreon is just a way of supporting Pure Hustle Podcast. We have our weekly episode that goes out. We have our Monday minis, which I don't think we talk about enough on our like episodes. Like if you're a podcast listener, you might not be aware that like every Monday on YouTube, we have like a 10 to 15 minute like mini episode that goes up. And so, you know, we're covering various things. We got some interesting ones coming up here pretty soon. So if you're not already following us there, go ahead and check that out. But if you want to support what Pure Hustle Podcast does, because it costs money for the software we use for editing, it costs money for the servers we're using, for the cameras that we use, for the lighting, for our time, all of that. So we have some followers who are like, hey, you know, thanks for having all this content for free. We appreciate it. They support us on Patreon, $5.55 a month. And then on top of just supporting Pure Hustle Podcast and keeping us going so that you have new content every single Wednesday. I think that's unique with us with a lot of podcasts. Like I think most podcasts that I listen to every year at some point, at least once during the year, takes like a good break.
We don't take breaks.
We have never once not had content. Like I think we've had like
maybe one or two where like everything went crazy and we couldn't drop an episode. But I don't even think
I don't think so. No. So I think we've and we don't recycle episodes too. That's another thing. Some podcasts will like, they'll literally play an old episode. Like here's a good one back in number 173. Here it goes again. And they'll listen, like, let's play it. What we've done in the past is we've taken like a compilation of like BOLOs or hustles, turned it into its own episode.
Only once.
A couple of times we've done that.
Even the last two holiday seasons, we still recorded.
We recorded. So again, so for those of you who want to like thank us for that, we have our Patreon, and as a benefit of that, you get the Discord. It's not like you're paying for extra content, but it is cool to be part of a community of other people who are supporting Pure Hustle Podcast. So we appreciate all of those people.
All right. And hey, if you haven't been following us on social media, we are Pure Hustle Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We are Pure Hustle Cast on Twitter. You can always give us a call, 619-738-1170. That's 619-738-1170. Shoot us an email at purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. That's purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. And as always, you are welcome to, if you're just listening to podcasts and you want to catch those minisodes, come on over to YouTube. Our YouTube it's growing a little faster. You know, we went through a phase where it was like 10 new people, right? And so appreciate all the people that have been subscribing. If you haven't yet, just jump on over to our YouTube, Pure Hustle Podcast, subscribe, hit that like button right now, and hit that bell notification whenever.
Just hit it, smash it. That's
there
what
you
the
go,
kids
smash
say.
it. That's what the kids say.
At least that's what they did pop culture like 4 years ago when we started this. So I don't know if they're still saying smash it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let us know in the comments below.
There was definitely a certain phase when they said smash. And as always, grateful for all of you that leave us reviews on iTunes. It definitely helps us in the algorithm. It gets our content out to more people. So when they type in reselling or they type in selling on eBay, our podcast pops up. So thank you to everyone that's helped us out. All right. We got some interesting, some controversial maybe things to talk about here.
Ooh. All right. Reselling continues to happen no matter what's happening with the economy. What do you do with negative feedback? We'll talk about that, and we'll let eBay talk about that. All this and more. Orlando, take it away.
All right. So I came across, I don't know how I came across it, but OfferUp did like some report, the 2022. I guess the new word now is re-commerce.
I don't know how new that is. It's been I've heard that for a little while now.
Really?
But that is a new-ish word, re-commerce. Okay. Yep.
All right. So OfferUp, according to their article, said, "Oh no, did I just lose it?" According to I clicked on the wrong. But all right. So they interviewed a representative set of Americans and found out that they don't plan on slowing down. In fact, more than half, 50% of Americans will engage in re-commerce to increase their buying and their selling of pre-owned goods in the next 12 months. Now, here's some interesting findings. 82% of this sample, okay, so it's like 2,000 Americans from like different, I don't know how everybody always says, there's lies and then there's statistics. Was that Mark Twain? I think he said it more
eloquently
than that. But according to this one, 82% of Americans buy and sell secondhand goods, and the majority prefer to use online re-commerce places as opposed to in-store options. And I hope that to be true. Some of these other ones are interesting. 93% of Americans say inflation impacts their decision to buy and sell secondhand goods, with an increasing emphasis on making and saving money, accelerating the growth of re-commerce. So that's a benefit. Now, I'm still waiting. A lot of people think like inflation it may have peaked, but that inflation kind of goes away. It's not going to go away for like 2 or 3 years at least.
Well, and that's the thing is like the idea is like people think like inflation doesn't go away in the sense of like the increased prices almost never go down. Like
True.
They'll go slightly down in categories, but what's going to happen is it's not going to keep going up at the same speed that it's going up. But I mean, once prices start going up, and we know this, like when prices go up, it's not like stores and companies are like, hey, you know what? People have been paying this price, so we're going to gladly drop. Now there will be some drop as people are trying to get, customers buying again. But yeah, I mean, when prices go up, I mean, think about it like with gas. So when gas prices start to rise, when it was $3 a gallon and people were like, man, I'm almost paying $4.
Yeah.
And then once you bump gas up to over $5, then when it gets down into $4.50 again, you're like, oh man, I'm only paying $4.50. This is great. And it's like, yeah, a year ago you would have been up in arms, but now you're happy comparatively, right? And so that's so that yeah, I don't think inflation could slow, but the reality is price increases in some categories will go down. But I think the reason why you can say that prices are so much more than they were in the 60s and 70s, 80s, they don't go back down to the way they were in the 80s. No, right? It always goes
in the 90s. We had 29-cent hamburger and 39-cent cheeseburger Wednesdays at McDonald's.
Those are the days.
Do you remember those days?
You could only order 20 though, at least at the McDonald's where I live.
And I remember after a sports game, I got challenged to do it.
Oh, we do it all the time. My dad, we'd drive through twice. So there were 3 of us boys plus my dad plus some neighborhood kids that pretty much lived with us. And so we would try and get 40. And so we'd have to order 20, go through the drive-through, order 20 again. Yep. Yeah,
I remember those days. Those days are gone. Like never. I mean, right now a cheeseburger, I think it's like $2.29 or something.
Yeah, Dollarman. You remember that?
Oh, that was only 2 years ago. Like I love getting the ice cream from McDonald's, like just a cone. I remember when it was $1, and now it's like $2.29. Just great. Anyways, all right, enough of that. And then, so I thought this was going to affect the way I source. I looked at this a little bit. 76% of goods sold through re-commerce are in categories such as electronics, furniture and home goods, home improvement, sporting and outdoor equipment, and auto parts. In fact, apparel makes up 24% of the total re-commerce market. So you can look at that in 2 ways. One is there's a lot of room to grow for apparel, or maybe, that's right now, it's probably a better time to move away from clothing and move into more hard goods. Right. And I would say myself, my experience has been that I've been selling more hard goods. Now, granted, that's what I've been sourcing more too. So I can't say it's, correlation is causation, but yeah, definitely interesting. Now, two other things that I thought were pretty important here. 80% growth in expected re-commerce in the next 5 years. The re-commerce market is projected to reach $289 billion by 2027 and grow 5 times faster than the overall retail market. So to me, even though things are tough now, I do think as people are tightening what they spend, because listen, right now, I look at, for example, like I'll see like a TikTok live and there's like Disneyland's like packed out. And I think people don't understand the reality of where we're at yet. Right? I mean,
there's a lag. I mean, that I've even heard that. Hey, I actually cut you off for once. Like housing prices is a good example of this, right? So as interest rates continue to rise significantly, houses just aren't selling like they used to. It's not a seller's market anymore. But the thing is, if you're a person, you own a home and you're going to try and sell it, and you think to yourself, 4 months ago, my neighbor sold their house for, I don't know, $800,000. And now I can't get 600. I'm not lowering it anymore. I'm not going to lower the price. They got 800. My house is worth 800. And so it takes a little while before it's like, wait, it's been on the market. It's been on the market. Nobody's selling. All of a sudden other people start lowering the prices. And then it takes a little while for people to catch up with, like you said, where we're at, to realize like, wait a minute, I guess I can't sell for this much. Like maybe I can sit here and think, bummer, my neighbor sold theirs 6 months ago for this much, but I'm just not there. And so, yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot of people who are still, money comes in. If you're in California, there's, money just went out to help gas prices, I guess, was the,
we got another stimulus check coming here.
Basically that's what it is. So, I mean, we're already, every time
which always does wonders with inflation.
So, but I mean, again, so if you're a reseller in another parts of the country, you might notice a influx of sales coming from California for like luxury goods. Some people obviously are going to take that money and they need it because they're already hurting really bad. And groceries cost more and gas costs more. But, for some people, if they're already able to make things work and you just get from the government a free $1,200 you weren't expecting, it's like, heck yeah, I'll buy that camera I wanted for $600 on eBay. I mean, I didn't have this money before. Now I have it, And so those little spikes of like, hey, look, a bunch of new sales are coming in. Look at all these sales I'm getting from California. Like that'll last for a little bit. And then it catches up where we're really at.
Yeah, I agree. Cause I remember months ago, like people would comment like unemployment hasn't hit. This isn't a recession. Well, no, it's happening now, right? There's a lag in the economy. Now I thought this was interesting here. In 2022, Americans spend as much time shopping re-commerce online as they do browsing social media. Online shopping has made re-commerce more accessible. 61% of shoppers choose to shop secondhand via online re-commerce and marketplaces, while only 39% shop secondhand in store. But re-commerce is more than just a shopping preference. It has become part of the consumer's daily lifestyles. Americans spend an average of 27 minutes per day on re-commerce platforms, which is just shy of 30 minutes per day spent on Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat.
Now, what I wonder though is that combined. So are they spending an hour and a half on social media and then 27 minutes shopping?
It's possible.
Because I can't imagine that 27 minutes of shopping and then people are only spending 27 minutes on social media. I see how much social media people are using.
I think it's on average though.
On average, I think people are spending a couple hours a day on social media.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's so crazy.
No, it's so crazy. I got to tell you, before Peter's podcast, like you and I really didn't do social media like at all. So anyways, things to think about, things maybe to give you hope and encourage you that, people will begin to buy even more so as the economy begins to tighten. There's also going to be plenty of opportunities to buy, which this is why I continue buying. And we'll see where we are a year from now. Too bad. I wish we had an AI that could like go through all our episodes and like take clips out. Right? Because I know we've said a lot of things that came true, and I know we've said a lot of things that didn't come true. So I listen, I always want to be wrong when I talk about like the economy and stuff. I'd rather be wrong. I'd rather us have like the golden, like I remember at the end of COVID, people were talking about that, as soon as things got back to normal, that we were going to have like the roaring 20s again. Do you remember we were talking about that it was going to be an age of decadence and people. And so the NFT market was exploding. Metaverse was like, people were buying Decentraland, like pieces of like people were buying cruise ships in the metaverse for like over $100,000. That literally lasted, I think, like 6 months, if that.
Crazy times.
So anyways, all right.
Now, to be honest, though, so we do say like we hope we're wrong with this stuff. And of course, our perspective is one opinion on things. And hopefully it's an opinion based off of, logic and thought. And there's definitely smarter people than me that could come up with different conclusions on different things. So, but the reality is PLS Podcast has never been negative of the fact that we think reselling is adaptable and 100%. That you can make it work. So even if you hear us, because we've been accused of being like doomsdayers and stuff, but like hopefully what we're saying is not like, hey, the economy is going down. So what you should do is go buy a bunch of food stores and put it in your basement and go get a gun and lock your door and bar it. And then the zombie, like that's not what we're saying. Like we're saying is, just be aware, like no matter what, like if the economy gets worse and things get hard, I think reselling, there's definitely gonna be some downs in it, but then there's potential for growth. And then the same thing is if the economy turns around and gets better, like no matter what, we can win if we're being wise. And so that's all we want to be saying as PLS Podcast is, if you're listening to this, don't take away from it that like, oh, Mike and Orlando are just negative about the economy or negative about reselling. We're actually trying to be positive. We're trying to say, no matter what comes, you just got to be aware. It's the people who put their head in the sand. I mean, if I'm wrong, it's the economy gets way, way better and I'm going to succeed. But if I'm right, I've been doing the things that I need to do to prepare for things to be potentially get worse, right? So that's all we're saying is we can not only succeed, but it's usually during downturn economies when the largest wealth changes hands. It's always during. I mean, I watched one like Instagram, TikTok thing. And I mean, you mentioned this too. Like I'm a big Warren Buffett fan when it comes to investing style, as far as value investing. And you were kind of opposed to that in a sense and like kind of like riding the bull market wave.
Yeah, it was nice.
And one of the things you said is like, that's just the old school way of doing it. Like there's a new, but the reality is a lot of those people haven't been selling for a long time. Have only ever sold in a bull market. And I watched one guy make a little, it was a 30-second TikTok type video. And his video was, everybody was saying how foolish Warren Buffett was for not buying during the bull market. He was sitting on like some $230 million or billion dollars. He's just sitting on this money. Everybody else is buying and everyone's saying Warren Buffett's lost it. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have what it takes anymore in this market. He doesn't know what to do. And he goes, now Warren Buffett's sitting on that money and he's like, how many of you guys would like to have that money right now? Yeah. He's going to go buying, he's going to go shopping, and he's going to buy all of these companies on discount. They're all going to be for sale, and they're going to be for sale at fraction of what they're worth. And so the point we're trying to make is if you're being wise during bad times, you can come out ahead. And maybe you miss it this time. I mean, it's all the people who have the best stories of their house that they bought or the business they were able to buy turnkey or all those things was they were in the right place at the right time, usually during a market crash. Mm-hmm. Hey, I bought my house during the market crash. You never hear the positive story of, yeah, I bought my house when it was at its peak and that was the best decision I ever made. And so during a crash, you can, if you can ride it through and make it through, you're going to be fine. And if you can potentially capitalize on it, and maybe you miss it this time, maybe you don't have the capital available. Well, listen to PRSL podcast. This tends to happen every 7 to 14 years. There's going to be another like big event that happens and things end up going back down. So be in a place where you can buy the property, where you can expand your business tenfold because you had the money, you had the capital, you were ready to buy. I mean, just imagine if you were buying stock right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know.
It's a big deal.
I'm waiting a little bit longer, but
yeah, I mean, you could try and time it down too. I mean, but you never know. You never know.
I know. All right. Now, this came up in the Discord and I thought this was good to share with everyone. So some people had mentioned that they ended up dropping below above standard or below top rated seller. And I hear a lot of YouTubers say it's not a big deal. It's okay. And I want to tell you guys that's false. That is a false narrative. And this is why. So if you go to eBay and you look at their promoted listing standard and their eligibility criteria, it says promoted listing standard puts your merchandise in front of more buyers when they're actively searching and shopping on the eBay network, increasing them visibility and increasing item visibility and helping to improve the likelihood of a sale. Promoted listing standards. So this is not pay-per-click. This is just the basic promoted listings. Is currently available to above standard and top rated sellers with enough account activity. Sellers can promote fixed price listings for most categories except vehicles, real estate, everything else. Why does it say everything else? Well, what is everything else?
There must be a category on eBay.
Interesting. And some travel categories. Action buy now listings that are not eligible at this time. When you create a promo listing standard campaign, only listings that are eligible for the service will appear in your selection view. So let me repeat that one key line. Promoted listing standard is currently available to above standard and top rated eBay sellers. And so what happened is we had some people in the Discord, for whatever reasons, they ended up dropping below above standard or losing their top rated seller status, and they were unable to promote their listings and their listings tanked.
So do you know what everything else is?
What?
It's the adult only eBay stuff.
But that doesn't exist anymore, right?
It does.
I guess so.
It's so
I love how they call it everything else.
Everything else is the not safe for work stuff. We'll just leave it there.
There you go. So be aware that you want to make sure you're above standard. You want to make sure you're above top rated. Because again, if eBay is saying that their standard for promoted listings is 2%, it used to be 1%, they moved it to 2%, and most of their income or their revenue comes from promoted listings, not from gross merchandise sales. That's the selling of goods between you and a buyer. Then chances are you want to make sure you're doing promoted listings. And that gate that you need to make sure is open for you is above standard, top rated seller, so you can continue having sales. So make sure you're aware of that.
That's good.
All right. This next one might put us in a little bit of controversy, might not. So I had Mike listen to this. I don't know how much Mike listened. So the latest eBay for Business podcast, which we can't play because maybe we'll get a copyright strike. We're not going to play it.
No.
Okay. All right. So somebody had called in and they had asked about feedback removal. Right. And they said, hey, is it worth it? What's the point? Like, how do you do it? And the response to me was, for lack of a better word, wasn't probably the best response. There was my thoughts. Before I go into what are your thoughts on it? What did they say? Do you remember?
Yeah. So I'll summarize the situation. Okay. So the guy calls in. The point he makes, other than talking about some astrology, was that he is proud of his good feedback, and that getting negative feedback, this has only been like the second time he's gotten negative feedback, and he's pretty upset about it. And kind of wondered if there was, something to do, what eBay's basically suggestion was. And the eBay for Business podcast, their response was kind of twofold. I think part of it, the advice was valid, but I think the way it was presented was pretty poor. So essentially they said, look, you take pride in your good feedback. It's easy to get good feedback. Don't worry about, I mean, if you got good feedback, who cares? What's actually more important isn't that you got negative feedback, because that happens. In fact, I've gotten a couple of negative feedback in my 10 years of selling. However, what's important is how you respond to negative feedback. So you're actually going to be better off with a negative feedback and a positive response to it on your eBay, like message to them, than just a whole bunch of positive feedback. Customers don't really care if you've got nothing but positive feedback. What customers care about is how you respond to the negative feedback you have. Are you being mean and aggressive to them, to the customer who was upset, or were you, professional? Essentially was what they said, which I think there's some validity there. Like, you don't want to see if you're buying from a company and they're being snarky to all the people who have complaints. I'm like, wow, this is a company that's, that doesn't seem professional. I don't want to buy from them. So there's validity there. But I think it was almost kind of like, who cares if you have positive feedback? It's okay to have some negative feedback, but I think that what they don't realize, because they, I've had a couple of negative feedback in my 10 years of selling, is I don't think they understand what it means to be a reseller who sells on eBay. Now, it's one thing to say, hey, I work for eBay. I sell some stuff here and there, make a little bit of money, mostly so I can understand how reselling works, but this is my job. Like, I used to work for DirecTV. I get it. I had to own DirecTV. I had to watch some DirecTV channels. I needed to be able to talk about DirecTV. What new programs we were offering and all of that. But that didn't mean that I was like a TV junkie. People would call in and they knew way more about TV really because it was their life than I did. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same thing as if you're a full-time reseller. And I don't think what eBay for Business was taking into account was, hey, if I get negative feedback, there seems to be a huge dip in my sales. Negative feedback tends to hurt. At least it seems like the amount of conversion that I'm getting. It seems like I'm being pushed further back in the algorithm. My stuff isn't being promoted as high. I'm being punished for a negative feedback. So it's not just like, hey, like our podcast, I never expect to have a 5.0 rating. I'm totally fine. But it's like on Amazon. When I buy something on Amazon, if I see 4.5 stars or almost 5 stars with thousands of reviews, and there's a couple of people who are upset, totally fine. But if there's 200 reviews and they're all positive and they're all 5 stars, that's a little fishy to me.
Yeah, I see that, but I think it's what was missed was what is said in that negative feedback, right? Because, I sell collectibles. So if I had somebody leave a negative feedback that said poorly packaged and eBay refused to remove that, that would hurt me. Like, there would be a collector that would look and they would see that it's like a train or it's, a vintage toy or something. And they'd be like, I don't know if I want to buy from this guy. Right. Or the feedback was, terrible customer service, or I never heard from this person, or it just, to me, it's glaring. It's glaring. Right. I've had moments where people have left some really bad negative feedback that was not true. And, one of the message was like, hey, you just suck it up. It's part of doing business and it gives you an opportunity to make things right. And not trying to repeat too much what you said, but one of the responses was like, make sure in your response and the feedback that you don't sound like you're crazy. And that's true. You shouldn't. I would actually say don't leave anything on there because it looks like you're trying to excuse yourself. But if you're a full-time reseller, okay, I've done this long enough that I know that I get, and I can't say 100%, but I'm pretty sure that people are willing to buy from me because they look at the 100% feedback and then they look at whenever it says package really well, or this guy here super fast, or any of those are good. But when I get something that's like, terribly packaged, never heard from this person, my item, was broken and they didn't do anything to resolve it. Like, I 100% believe you need to fight every single feedback.
Now, part of that though could be that we have an inflated feedback system. So I think there's validity, and don't get me wrong, I totally am opposed to what the eBay for Business podcast was saying. Okay. However,
and even if you weren't, we're still friends.
That's fine. But the thing I'm thinking is, for example, grades is a good example. San Diego District of Education has decided that there will be no zeros for grades. You get a 50%.
I went down that road.
Yeah, 50% is the lowest grade you can get for not doing something. The lowest grade you can get for even putting your name on assignment is a 55%, right? So
wait, you get 5% for putting your name?
You don't have to do anything else, right? You just you turn in, you press turn in on the assignment. You didn't do anything to it, 55%. So nice. What that does is it inflates the grades, right? So what used to be, hey, this person worked really hard and they got a B, right? With kind of an inflated grade system, because hey, if somebody worked a little bit and I would give this normally a D, well, hey, why would I give them a 60% when the person who did nothing gets a 55? So this is at least a 75 compared to that. So it inflates the grades. And so you look at that and you go, well, an A doesn't really mean what it used to. And I think it's kind of the same thing with eBay with the inflation of feedback. So if you look at most sellers all have 100% feedback, it almost doesn't mean as much as if negative feedback was almost impossible to remove and everybody had some of it, it wouldn't be a big deal, right? Because you'd look at it and you go, that's what I expect on Amazon. Amazon, you can't really remove feedback, I'm sure, because there's books where it's like some people really love the book and they explain why. And then there's a couple of people who give like a 2% on the book and they're like, this was dumb. I don't like it because this reason. And I read their responses and I'm like, yep, that's probably the reason I would like that book, because the things you say you don't like. And so it kind of, there's almost more trust when there's, some negative, some positive, more positive than negative. The people who are negative, you're like, that person is the one that sounds crazy. But when you're in a system where you kind of look at it and you're like, hey, almost everybody has 100% positive feedback, then the couple of negative feedbacks that people do have, it's like, wait a minute, why does this person have negative?
Yeah. And that's my rationale. Like, you need to make sure your reputation is kept. And now I know some of you that listen to us don't have 100%, and I get that. But try to keep it at that high 99% or 98%, right? You don't want to dip lower than that. But there's also the safety net where you never know. You might end up like all good and you get that one negative feedback and you kind of, you dealt with it. And I know one day maybe I'll have to deal with one. And then you get hit with like 2 or 3 in a month, right? And then it starts looking even more, because I do look at the negative feedback. Now, I don't want to go circle around this, but they had mentioned it's not worth the time to message or to call eBay. And I would disagree with that. It is worth your time. If you're selling certain types of items and you want buyers to have confidence in you, I'd rather spend the time messaging and calling and get that 100% feedback back to ensure that people, when they see my store and they see what I sell, know that they're going to get 100% customer satisfaction when they get their item.
Yeah. You know who doesn't want to deal with that?
Who?
eBay. Honestly, like you'd be okay with wasting an hour of your time to get a negative feedback removed if it was like hurting your business. eBay doesn't want to give up an hour of their paid employee to deal with your store, which is why I think it would make sense for them to be like, don't even worry about it. It's not that big of a deal unless it's a really big deal. Then you can call it, but mostly don't worry about it, because they kind of have a dog in the fight to be like, we'd rather not be inundated with phone calls of people wanting to get feedback removed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if we gave buyers feedback, right, people would have major issues with having, bad negative feedback on their buying profile, because that would cause people to go, you know what, I'm not going to sell this person, right? So it's the same, it's vice versa. All right, I don't want to belabor the point. Fight every negative feedback. Keep your reputation up. Yeah. All right, let's talk about some things that make us money here.
Yeah.
Bolo. What's your bolo?
All right. What's my bolo? So we've talked a lot about, maybe not a lot, but we've talked about various watches. You've had some good watch hauls. What type of watches was it that you were?
I like selling Swatch. I like some of those 80s, 90s watches.
So we've talked about Swatch. We've talked about Swiss, Seiko, I think. I know I've talked about Seiko. I know I've talked about Bellow, I think is how you pronounce it.
Bellow, yeah.
So we've talked about various brands of watches that we've done, but one that I don't think we've talked about yet, but it is actually a really good bolo, and they're not that hard to find. They're valuable watches, but you do run into them at places. Is the brand Citizen. So Citizen watches, especially if they're vintage. So if you're looking at older Citizen watches, and the comps on them are really good. They're going to vary, of course, but there's quite a few that I've found that are in the 100+ range. Right. So when you're talking about watches that you can pick up oftentimes at garage sales or not thrift stores typically, but maybe a swap meet or something like that, and you're paying $5-10 maybe for a watch. I've started getting into replacing batteries on watches because I used to sell them for parts.
We need to talk. I have like 20 watches.
Nice. It's easy to do depending on the watch. But yeah, when you're talking about like a $2 to $5 pickup for a watch, especially if it doesn't work, somebody at a garage sale, they're looking at the watch and they're like, yeah, it doesn't work. I don't know. $5, $10. You could sell it for over $100. It's a no brainer because they're easy to ship. They're easy to take pictures of. They don't cost a ton to store space wise. I mean, it's really a win-win-win. You don't have to replace batteries on watches and stuff. You can make more. If you could sell the Citizen watch for $123 working, you could probably sell it for $65, $70 with no battery and just say it needs a battery. Now, I've always just sold watches as needs a new battery.
Yeah.
And I've never actually replaced the battery and tested because it's true. It needs a new battery. I didn't say like every other feature works on it perfectly. And I've never had a customer buy a watch, replace the battery and say, hey, it also doesn't keep time or it doesn't work or the gear's broken.
Lucky.
Maybe I've gotten lucky, but I just think like most of the time watches, I feel like, I mean, some of them break, but like, if you're not just buying a cheapy watch, it's just the battery goes out, someone stops wearing it, they put it in a drawer, right? It's not like people are throwing them around the house most of the time. So most of the time, batteries or watches are going to work. They just need a battery.
Agreed. All right. It's a good bolo. All right. So mine is an interesting one. I'm a big fan of buying team gear of the team that loses in the playoffs.
Yeah. Most people root for the winners, man.
Yeah, no, well, because a lot of people, what they do is they're all getting hyped. They buy all this stuff and then their team loses. And a lot of people are just fed up. And so they'll donate it. They'll sell it for cheap. I mean, right now I went on OfferUp and there's a whole bunch of Padres stuff being sold. And so keep an eye because you might think, well, this isn't worth it. I don't know when this is going to sell. So if you're able to buy stuff for cheap and hold on, because here's the thing, if a team did really well one year, chances are they're going to do well next year. Except for the Phillies. Do you know the Phillies generally make it to like the World Series during a time of recession?
I saw a post about that. I didn't like.
I thought it was interesting. Anyways, I'm just a little bitter still, but I'm a big fan of going to the thrift stores, and sometimes people just unload. Like they're like, I'm done with this team. I mean, you get a lot of fair weather fans that they're just, for the moment, they were able to get tickets.
They wanted to go to a game and
they bought all this gear.
Or they went to a party.
Yeah. And they bought all this gear and now they're like, I don't really care anymore. And so they'll donate it or they'll try to sell it on Craigslist or some, local marketplace. So keep an eye out. The Yankee stuff, like Yankees people thought were going to move forward and then they lost. And so just keep an eye out. Now, Yankee stuff is kind of tough. I would say that there's so much of that, but maybe there's a lot of Padres stuff. There's a lot of, other teams that didn't make it far. A lot of Dodger stuff that didn't make it far. But, keep an eye out because in the next month or so, those things are going to begin to show up at the thrift or show up in local deals. And you can get some good buys and just hold till that season. And as the season's coming, people begin to get nostalgic and go, maybe this will be the year. And they start buying that stuff. So keep an eye on losing playoff team gear.
So,
all right. Hey, before we move on, when's the last time you shaved your head?
When's the last time I shaved my head? This morning.
Did you use that special tool?
Oh yeah, skull shaver. It's good stuff, man. If you haven't bought a skull shaver yet, what you're sleeping on it, man. I mean, you got to get yourself a skull shaver. They are fantastic products. They're high quality. How long have we been sponsored by Skull Shaver?
It's been 2 years at least.
I mean, it's probably closer to 3 now.
Yeah.
Either way, though, I've been using the exact same device. A lot of times you buy products and like the battery works for a few months and then it stops holding a charge. This thing's still holding a charge. It still cuts great. It's really just a beast. You can throw it in the bag, shave your head. It goes good, fast, quick. I love it. If you just get one. Use promo code HUSTLE, capital H, and you'll get a nice little discount. Lets them know we sent you.
It's great for Christmas.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the Q4 gift for sure. Get yourself a skull shaver. Find that bald loved one in your life. That person that, I mean, let's be honest, us bald people need a little bit more love. The life's already hard. It's already hard for us. So make it a life a little easier with a skull shaver.
Okay. All right. What are you looking forward to, Mike?
I'm looking forward to finishing up kind of the organization of my move and kind of getting some stuff listed and going again. So just kind of having the store running on like partial capacity.
So when you talk move, like we should talk off podcast about this, but let's say percentage wise, what percentage are that you're going to move?
Oh, okay. So you're talking like cross country move. I'm still talking about moving my inventory from
you're still
my shed
doing that?
Yeah, because I've been able to kind of sell between both and then just kind of have like my store on like I said, like running on like partial steam, not really going full force, which has been fine because I mean I'm able to make enough reselling that it does what I want it to do. But how sure am I I'm moving cross country? I'm thinking 100%, man. It's got to be. I got to do what's right for my family. I mean, I would say probably every single one of our listeners, if you're hustling and you're doing this as a second job or even full time, you probably have like this huge desire to like provide a better life for yourself or your family, right? One of those two things. And so, different decisions have to be made. And, but just to clarify for those of you who are like, oh no, what about Pure Hustle Podcast? Promise you, Pure Hustle Podcast will continue. And it will not, the quality is not going to go down. The type of content you get, it will not go down. You will be getting the same, if not better.
I just wonder what it would be like. Let's say 2 to 3 years from now, hypothetically, I get back into education. I'm still reselling. That would be an interesting podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I might actually end up moving more towards reselling.
Yeah. Right? And like things might
flip.
Switch.
You never know.
Who knows? And I'm not saying that's happening. It's just, catch our mini-sode on Monday because we'll talk about the advantages of a 9-to-5 or reselling, part of a 2-part series. All right. Hey, okay, good. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I mean, there's only so much you can do, right? So going to keep sourcing, going to keep listing, going to keep shipping. I mean, there's no magic formula to rebounding, right? The market is unpredictable. And so I'm just going to keep doing that. I am going to scout for Amazon because if eBay does not begin to bring in results, I'm just going to have to find another way to make money in sales. And again, this is the first Q4 that I have not done extensive retail arbitrage. I actually have not picked up a single item for resale arbitrage, where this time last year, I already was like, I don't think I had the van yet, but I was already out in stores. I was filling up my garage. I was sending things to FBA, and I've done none of that because I just haven't found the stuff, and I don't know if that's going to be the safe bet for this Q4. So, all right. Hey, thank you everyone that tuned in. Really appreciate all of you sticking with us, allowing us to keep it real. I know, like Mike said, sometimes we seem like doom and gloom, but we always, we just want to document where we're at, document what's happening. But in the end, reselling is one of those things that is a for sure thing, as long, there's a lot of things tied to it, but got to tell you, it's just a great thing to be able to do to level up your standard of living. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Peace.